Four killed during protest against motorcycle ban in Adamawa State. All Progressives Congress sets up committee to investigate Shuaibu's allegations against Adams Oshiomhole. In international news, UK Prime Minister Theresa May steps down as party leader stays on till a new Prime Minister is chosen. And in sport, CAF President Ahmad investigated over financial crimes.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. 4 people are said to have been killed in a protest against the ban on motorcycles in Adamawa State. Residents trooped out protesting against the enforcement of the ban placed last month by the State Police Command. With support from the state government, the police had announced the ban with explanation that criminals were using motorcycles for robbery and kidnapping. An eyewitness says 2 of the demonstrators allegedly shot by soldiers died on their spot. In another development, Bauchi State Police Command has confirmed the death of 1 person during the double procession when district heads of Bauchi Emirates paid homage to the governor at the government's house. 14 are reported to have been injured. Pandemonium broke out when some groups of hunters attached to the district heads of Darazo and that of Duguri local government started shooting at each other. Police Command Public Relations Officer Kamau Dati says normalcy has been restored and 55 suspects have been arrested. 4 days from now, the 9th National Assembly will be inaugurated. Clerk of the National Assembly, Mohammed Sani Omolori, has announced that the 9th Senate would be inaugurated the next day. Sani Omolori confirms the 8th Assembly will officially terminate by 12 midnight on Saturday. Meanwhile, Senator Danjuma Goje has announced his withdrawing from the race for Senate President. He announced his endorsement for Senate Leader Ahmad Lawan a few minutes after Goje, who is Chairman, Senate Committee on Appropriation and preferred candidate of the outgoing Senate President, met behind closed doors with President Muhammadu Buhari at the Presidential Villa, Abuja. Senator Ahmad Lawan is the party's preferred candidate for the 9th Senate leadership. The National Working Committee of the ruling All Progressives Congress has set up a 5-man disciplinary committee to investigate the party's Deputy National Chairman, North Lawal Shuaibu. The decision was taken at the 38th regular meeting of the NWC held in Abuja. Shuaibu had recently asked the party National Chairman, Adams Oshiomhole, to resign. The National Working Committee passed a vote of confidence in Oshiomhole despite Shuaibu's outburst against him. Issa Onilu says the committee headed by a former Ekiti State Governor, Niyi Adebayo, would investigate Shuaibu for allegedly instigating some unnamed members of the party in the National Assembly against the party's decision on choice of next leaders of the federal parliament. The committee is expected to submit its report within 7 days. To court matters, the Federal High Court in Lagos has adjourned until June the 19th. Hearing in a debt recovery suit filed by the federal government against Shell Western Supply and Trading Limited over alleged $400 million shortfall in crude oil shipment. The money was said to be for crude oil lifted in 2013 and 2014. In a supporting affidavit, the federal government had accused the Anglo-Dutch company of not declaring or under-declaring crude oil shipments during the period. The federal government is seeking a court order to compel the 2 companies to repay the missing revenue with interest. The government has also brought similar actions against Chevron and Total. It is asking for $13 billion for alleged non-declaration of 57 million barrels of crude shipped to the U.S. between 2011 and 2014. The oil companies are among 15 oil majors, more than $17 billion in deprived revenue. The Chief Judge of the Federal High Court, Adamu Abdulkafarati, has transferred the criminal trial of the former governor of Ekiti State, Ayodele Fayose, from the trial judge, Mojisola Olatoregun of the Lagos Division of the Federal High Court, to a new judge, Chukwujekwe Aneke. The prosecution, EFCC, has filed a petition against the trial judge for the transfer of the case on the grounds that it has lost confidence in her. The transfer came after a heated exchange in open court during the last proceedings between Judge Alateregun and Rotimi Jacobs, a senior advocate of Nigeria and counsel to the EFCC. Their communications TV channel, AIT, and airwaves of radio station Ray Power have remained dark and silent for 2 days now after the National Broadcasting Commission suspended the licenses of the two broadcast stations. Media mogul Raymond Dakwase, founder of Dare Communications, owners of the two stations, has alleged witch hunt of the organization by Embassy Director General Ishak Modibo Kawu. Kawu says the action was taken because of the failure of the broadcasting stations to abide by the broadcasting code. Dakwase addressed a World Press Conference where he urged the presidency to remove Kawu from office in the collective interest of the nation's broadcast industry. Coming up, African stories. African Union suspends Sudan. And later, international news. UK Prime Minister steps down.
You are watching ANN.
Somewhere in the world, every second of the day, news is happening. And of course, Nigeria is bustling with news day and night. That is why ANN doesn't sleep. Our eyes are peeled, wide open, so no story escapes our radar. We stay abreast of world events and happenings at home. We keep you up to the minute in the world of sports. We give you information to stay on top of your investments and all the hard facts you need to navigate your day. If you miss us on air, you can keep up to date on our website, annafrica.net, and on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. We are ANN, African News Network. We do news right in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News in African Stories. The African Union, AU, has suspended Sudan from all its activities following Monday's deadly crackdown against protesters. AU's Peace and Security Council says the suspension takes immediate effect and will continue until the country establishes a civilian-led transition authority. The suspension comes after security forces opened fire on protesters, killing dozens in the capital, Khartoum. More than 100 persons have been reported dead in the violence, including 3 security personnel who were stabbed to death. The United Nations and several foreign governments have condemned the bloodshed. Meanwhile, the United Nations is also taking action to safeguard its workers in the Sudan. Some of its civilian staff will be temporarily removed from the country because of security concerns after the deadly raid on protesters on Monday. The crackdown followed weeks of wrangling between the ruling military council and opposition groups over who should lead Sudan's transition to democracy. This is the worst outbreak of violence since the army ousted President Omar al-Bashir in April after months of protest against his rule. UN spokesman Farhan Haq says some of the civilian staff are being temporarily relocated from Sudan. He says there will still be some staff on hand to perform critical functions. The spokesman provided no information on how many were being moved, where they were going, when they might return, and how many would remain in the country. He said only civilian staff, not uniformed personnel, are leaving. The South African Reserve Bank has launched 6 coins of different denominations on Wednesday to commemorate the country's 25 years of democracy. The commemorative coins include the 2 rand and 5 rand denominations for collection and circulation. Eliza Njamela reports.
It has become tradition for the South African Reserve Bank to issue out commemorative and circulation coins to mark both key events in our history and individuals who played a role in that. The new circulation coins aim to highlight a few of the rights that resonated the most with citizens that were surveyed in South Africa. It's the first time in the history of the South African Reserve Bank and the South African Mint that South Africans were broadly consulted in developing coin themes and designs.
This is a happy occasion for the South African Reserve Bank, as it marks the culmination of a project that started last year with the South African Mint, in which we capture some of the essential elements of our constitution in coins. We honor the vision of the architects of our constitution with the new SA25 commemorative circulation and collectible coins that the SAP is launching here today.
Kganyago says the Reserve Bank has ensured the integrity of the banknotes and coins in circulation so that they remain a secure method of payment, a unit of account, and a store of wealth. This collection of coins joins a family of other commemorative coins that have been unveiled over the years.
The launch of the circulation coins completes our program to have a family of coins, both collectible and circulation, with themes showcasing the Bill of Rights as written into the Constitution, as well as showcasing the architectural wonder that is the Constitutional Court.
The issue of this new wonderful commemorative set is a moment for rejoicing in our court's life, in our country's life, and in the life of our country's independent institutions.
As we celebrate our democracy, we need to re-emphasize the importance of our independent institutions. And let's put our shoulders to the wheel and make South Africa a good place to be.
The launch of the commemorative coins forms part of the many events that are to be held to celebrate the 25-year anniversary milestone here in South Africa.
It's been in the works for a while, but is now on ground. A new law went into effect in Tanzania on Saturday against the use of plastic bags in a move to tackle pollution in the East African country. Under the new measure, anyone using plastic bags in Tanzania can be slapped with a fine, and those caught manufacturing the items can get jail term. Environmentalists are celebrating the move, and Daniel Kiju reports.
The ban on plastic bags came into force on June 1st as part of Tanzania's effort to tackle plastic pollution. It follows similar steps by others in the East African region, including Kenya and Rwanda, to phase out single-use plastics. The new legislation stipulates that manufacturing plastic bags in Tanzania can lead to a 2-year prison sentence or a fine of up to $400,000. Anyone carrying a bag can be subject to a fine of $13. The government says a lack of alternatives at this initial stage is to be expected, but that should change as more producers join the alternative bag market. Tanzania becomes the 34th African country to ban the production, importation, use and sale of plastic bags. As Tanzania tries to tackle its severe plastic waste problem, its citizens are still adjusting.
For now, these small bags are 22 cents. So if we sell things for 100 cents, buying a bag of 22 cents is very costly for the customer, almost impossible.
These bags are not like the old ones. These ones don't tear easily. You can carry your things well. I don't see any challenge.
The bags are still small. The government should reduce the prices of the bags to like 4 cents and make the bags bigger.
The United Nations Environmental Programme reports that only 9% of the 9 billion tons of plastic produced in the world has been recycled. Tanzania has joined the fight against a global problem, and officials say this is just the beginning of dealing with many other forms of plastic pollution.
When we return, international news. UK Prime Minister Theresa May steps down as party leader stays on till new Prime Minister emerges. And later, sports. CAF President Ahmad investigated over financial crimes.
You are watching ANN.
shining our eyes on breaking news, whether in the east or in the west, with Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Boko Haram in Nigeria, with turbulence in the north and agitation in the south. Wherever you live in Nigeria, wherever news happens in Africa, we've got it covered. ANN News, connecting Africans in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. On the international scene, Britain's opposition Labour Party narrowly held on to a parliamentary seat in eastern England on Friday, seeing off a challenge from Nigel Farage's insurgent Brexit Party to win by fewer than 700 votes. The Brexit Party, which was established in April, swept to victory in the United Kingdom's European Parliament election last month, riding to a wave of anger over Prime Minister Theresa May's failure to deliver Brexit on time. May's governing Conservatives came third in the European Parliament elections, almost 3 years since Britain voted 52% to 48% to leave the European Union. Lawmakers remain at loggerheads over how, when, or even whether to leave the EU. May steps down as leader of a Conservative party on Friday, formally triggering the race for a successor who will try where she failed to deliver Brexit.
Parliamentary arithmetic, how the votes stack up in our parliament, doesn't change. The reality that the European Union say there's no better deal on the table probably doesn't change. And the reality that the British people have voted for us to leave the European Union doesn't change. So it could be the worst job ever to take over in a situation where you can't change a thing.
May will remain Prime Minister until a new leader is chosen, likely in late July, but has relinquished control over the direction of Britain's tortuous departure from the European Union. 11 Conservative MPs are currently vying to replace her, including former Foreign Minister Boris Johnson, but some are expected to drop out before Monday's deadline for nominations. The winner will have only a few months to decide whether to try to salvage May's plan, delay Brexit again, or sever ties with Britain's closest trading partner with no agreement at all. May took office after the 2016 referendum votes to leave the EU and has spent the past 3 years working on the plan, delaying Brexit twice to try to get it through. As the deadline looms for U.S. President Trump's threat of tariffs on Mexican goods, Mexican experts say the prices of agricultural products sold to the U.S. will soar and the extra cost will be passed on to U.S. consumers. Of Agriculture says Mexico is the country's largest agricultural trading partner. Avocados often top the list of agricultural items that make their way to U.S. kitchens.
Tarda 9 meses para que se convierta de flor a fruto. Michoacán es algo excepcional en el mundo porque somos el único país donde tenemos 4 floraciones al año. Por eso es que nuestro eslogan es Always in Mexico, Always in Season.
Prices for this beloved food would rise for 7 U.S. consumers if Trump's tariff threat comes through. Food trade numbers show what's at stake. Last year, the U.S. bought nearly 80% of all Mexican agricultural exports. Most of that consisted of beer, vegetables and fruit.
Como los plantea Trump, de primero el 5 y luego el 10% y luego el 15 y luego el 20 hasta llegar al 25%, es que esta producción pues no pueda entrar a los Estados Unidos al precio accesible al que entraban usualmente. Eso implica que ese impuesto lo pagan los consumidores americanos.
Mexican agricultural producers are bracing for a possible trade war with the U.S. as they note that higher tariffs could make their food products less attractive to U.S. consumers, and that could lead to a fall in demand and exports. An American online news outlet, Politico, reported on Thursday that Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, has told fellow Democrats in a closed-door meeting Donald Trump should be sent to prison. The meeting was to discuss the thorny issue of whether to launch impeachment proceedings against the president. The report says Pelosi was responding to House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler, who asked to be able to begin an impeachment inquiry. Pelosi was quoted as saying, "I don't want to see him impeached, I want to see him in prison." Politico also cited multiple Democratic sources familiar with the meeting, where Trump's administration stonewalling various Democratic-led investigations. Many of the party's lawmakers have publicly called for impeachment, pointing to the report by Special Counsel Robert Mueller as confirmation of Trump's wrongdoing. Polls show a majority of Americans currently oppose impeachment, and to date, only one House Republican has expressed support for removing the president. Up next, sports. CAF president investigated over financial crimes. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Somewhere in the world, every second of the day, news is happening. And of course, Nigeria is bustling with news day and night. That is why ANN doesn't sleep. Our eyes are peeled, wide open, so no story escapes our radar. We stay abreast of world events and happenings at home. We keep you up to the minute in the world of sports. We give you information to stay on top of your investments and all the hard facts you need to navigate your day. If you miss us on air, you can keep up to date on our website, annafrica.net, and on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. We are ANN, Africa News Network. We do news right in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News in Sport. Mikel Obi says is ready to lead the Super Eagles to the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations in Egypt. The 32-year-old last featured for the three-time African champions at last year's World Cup and has missed the Eagles' last 7 games. President of the Confederation of African Football, Ahmad Ahmad, was released without charge in France on Friday, a day after being arrested for questioning as part of a probe into corruption, breach of trust and forgery. Ahmad was in Paris for the FIFA Congress ahead of the start of the Women's World Cup. His confederation's marquee event, the African Cup of Nations, kicks off in Egypt in 2 weeks. The French investigation confirms CAF's breach of a contract to Puma shortly after its signature in December 2017. The contract was for Puma to supply equipment and clothes to nearly 600 volunteers at last year's African Nations Championship, an event for home-based national teams on the continent. CAF allegedly tore up the contract in favor of a better offer from a small French-based company which supplies Adidas gear. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and all the stories, visit our social media platforms and join the conversation on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a great weekend.